Have you ever stopped a child from doing something because your body pictured the worst outcome before your mind measured the actual risk? Walking to a store alone, climbing higher than you expected, talking to a stranger behind a counter, taking the bus without an adult. On the outside, you looked careful. Inside, you were making a silent promise. If I can prevent every frightening moment, maybe this child will never have to feel afraid. Hi, I'm Sarah, and this is WiseMind Stories. So why do some children become more anxious as adults work harder to protect them? Jonathan Haidt's The Anxious Generation offers an uncomfortable answer. Safety can remove a danger. But safety alone cannot teach a child what to do when danger, uncertainty, embarrassment, or failure eventually arrives. The opposite of anxiety is not perfect safety. It is practiced courage. To understand the difference, meet Marcus Reed and his 11-year-old son, Eli. On a Monday afternoon, Eli came home carrying a bright yellow sheet from school. At the top, the teacher had written, "Independence Challenge." Every student had to choose one useful thing they had never done without adult help. They could prepare a simple meal, walk to a nearby store, speak to a neighbor, ride public transportation, or complete another task approved by a parent. The assignment was not about impressing anyone. The students would simply return the following week and explain what went wrong, what they did next, and what they learned. Eli already had a plan. He wanted to ride his bicycle 6 blocks to the hardware store and buy 2 metal brackets for a shelf he was building in the garage. Marcus read the sheet twice. "You can do the shelf," he said. "I'll drive you to the store. It says without adult help." "I'll wait in the car." "That is adult help." Marcus looked through the kitchen window as if the 6 blocks were visible from there. He pictured a distracted driver, a loose dog, an older teenager taking Eli's bike. He pictured every local news story that had ever entered his phone and remained inside his nervous system. "Choose something else," he said. Eli folded the yellow sheet and put it into his backpack. That evening, Marcus drove to the hardware store and bought the brackets himself. He believed he had solved the problem. What he had actually removed was the assignment. Marcus loved his son. That was never in question. But love can protect a child's body while accidentally teaching the child to distrust his own judgment. When Marcus was 9, he became separated from his parents at a crowded state fair. He remembered the noise, the moving wall of adult bodies, and the certainty that he had been abandoned forever. He was missing for 23 minutes. A security guard found him beside a ticket booth. His parents arrived breathless and crying. Everyone went home safely. For Marcus, the experience became a warning. Never let a child out of sight. For another child, the same event might have become a story about finding help. The event itself does not decide the lesson. The meaning built around it does. What frightening experience from your own childhood still writes rules for the children around you? And is that rule protecting them from today's risk, or protecting you from yesterday's fear? Haidt argues that children are not merely fragile objects that develop best when nothing difficult happens to them. Many parts of human development are antifragile. A fragile glass becomes weaker when stressed. A resilient ball survives being dropped and remains the same. An anti-fragile system can become more capable when it meets manageable stress and has enough time to adapt. Muscles need resistance. Immune systems need ordinary exposure. Social confidence needs awkward conversations, small disagreements, and repair. Children need experiences that are difficult enough to require something from them, but not so dangerous that one mistake can produce catastrophic harm. This does not mean trauma makes people stronger. It does not mean every danger is secretly a lesson. It means development requires the correct dose of challenge. Too much can overwhelm. Too little can leave a person unprepared. Marcus understood the first danger. He had never considered the second. On Wednesday, Eli's teacher sent Marcus a short message. Eli still had not selected an independence challenge. That night, Marcus offered alternatives. Eli could make pancakes while Marcus supervised. He could call his grandmother while Marcus helped him prepare what to say. He could organize the garage, as long as Marcus moved anything heavy. Eli listened quietly. Then he said, "Those are all things you can stop me from doing wrong." The sentence hurt because it was accurate. Marcus had confused participation with surveillance. He was willing to let Eli attempt something only while preserving the power to interrupt every uncertain moment. But a child cannot experience independence while an adult remains the invisible author of every decision. Marcus returned to the school assignment. At the bottom, the teacher had included one sentence for parents. Choose a task your child is ready to attempt, not a task you are ready to control. The next morning, Marcus agreed to the hardware store. He and Eli studied the route together. They identified 2 streets with traffic lights, a bike rack outside the store, and a public library halfway there. Eli wrote Marcus's number on a card in case the phone failed. They discussed what would count as an inconvenience and what would count as an emergency. Rain was an inconvenience. Forgetting the product name was a problem to solve. A minor delay was not a crisis. An injury, a threatening adult, or a road that felt unsafe meant stop and call. This was not reckless freedom. It was prepared independence. Saturday morning arrived. Eli placed 2 sample brackets in his backpack, checked the tires, and rolled the bicycle toward the driveway. Marcus watched him reach the end of the block. Then Marcus got into his car. He told himself he would remain far behind. Eli would never know. Technically, the boy would still make every decision alone. Marcus followed at a distance for 4 blocks. At a red light, Eli looked back. He saw the car. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Eli turned the bicycle around and rode home. He did not yell when Marcus returned. He simply placed the backpack on the garage floor. "You said I could do it. You were doing it." "No. You were watching me do it." Marcus tried to explain that he had been there only in case something happened. Eli looked at him. "How am I supposed to find out what I can do if you never stop being the answer?" Overprotection often wears the face of devotion. That is what makes it hard to examine. The uncomfortable reversal is that Marcus was not only preventing Eli from encountering danger, he was preventing himself from encountering uncertainty. Control was calming the parent more than it was developing the child. Have you ever called something protection when it was actually a way to manage your own fear? And how often does a child have to borrow an adult's confidence because nobody has allowed that child to build any? Haidt describes a long historical movement away from unsupervised play and independent mobility. Beginning decades before smartphones, adults became less willing to let children roam, negotiate their own games, solve disputes, or perform ordinary tasks without supervision. Then the virtual world arrived. We restricted the world where children could develop through physical experience and opened the world where they could be watched, compared, contacted, and influenced at all hours. Children were overprotected in the place where manageable risks could make them stronger, and underprotected in the place where risks could be invisible, scalable, and permanent. Marcus had kept Eli away from 6 blocks of real streets. But Eli could spend 3 unsupervised hours moving through online spaces designed by adults Marcus would never meet. That is the safety paradox. The threats parents can imagine feel urgent. The developmental capacities children fail to build remain invisible until years later. You can see a scraped knee. You cannot immediately see a missing sense of agency. You can see a child get lost for 5 minutes. You cannot easily measure what happens when a teenager reaches 16 and experiences every ordinary decision as a possible emergency. Marcus apologized, not for caring, for breaking the agreement. They decided to try again the next morning. This time, Marcus stayed home. For the first 12 minutes, he stared at the clock. Then he started washing dishes and dropped the same plate twice. At the hardware store, Eli discovered that the brackets in his backpack were no longer sold in that exact size. The clerk showed him 2 alternatives. One was stronger but required new screws. The other matched the old holes but cost more than the cash Marcus had given him. Eli stood in the aisle for 6 minutes. He could call home. Instead, he explained the shelf to the clerk, asked whether the cheaper bracket would hold the weight, and bought the stronger option with the new screws. On the ride home, the bicycle chain slipped off. His hands became black with grease. He remembered watching an online repair video months earlier, turned the bike upside down, and pulled the chain back over the gear. It fell off again 30 feet later. Eli walked the rest of the way. He arrived 28 minutes later than Marcus expected. Marcus had already picked up his car keys twice, but they had agreed that delay alone was not an emergency. When Eli finally appeared, Marcus felt relief so intense that it almost became anger. "What happened?" he asked. Eli lifted his dirty hands. "A lot." Then he explained the bracket, the screws, the clerk, and the chain. He had not completed the trip perfectly. That was why the trip mattered. A flawless experience would have proven only that the route was easy. The imperfect experience proved that Eli could remain functional when the plan changed. Children do not build confidence because adults repeatedly tell them they are capable. They build confidence when reality gives them evidence that they can act while uncertain. The opposite of anxiety is not perfect safety. It is practiced courage. On Monday, Eli brought the shelf to class. One side was slightly crooked because the new brackets did not align perfectly. He showed the class the grease still caught beneath his fingernails. His teacher asked what he had learned. Eli thought for a moment. "I learned that needing help is different from needing someone to do it for you." Marcus wrote that sentence down when Eli repeated it at dinner. He knew the next challenge would still frighten him. Growth did not require Marcus to stop feeling afraid. It required him to stop treating every feeling of fear as evidence of danger. That distinction matters for every adult trying to give a child more independence. The answer is not to copy another family's rules. Age, ability, disability, neighborhood design, traffic, local law, and the child's actual readiness all matter. The useful question is not, should every 11-year-old ride 6 blocks alone? It is, what is the next manageable responsibility this child can attempt without me taking over? Use 4 words: risk, radius, rescue, review. First, risk. Name the actual risk, rather than the most vivid image in your mind. How likely is it? How serious would it be? What preparation reduces it without removing the experience? Second, radius. Choose the smallest expansion of independence that creates real responsibility. 1 aisle away in a store, 1 block with a friend, 1 simple purchase, 1 meal prepared without correction. Third, rescue. Agree in advance on the difference between discomfort, a solvable problem, and a genuine emergency. If adults decide the rescue threshold while panicking, they usually intervene too early. Fourth, review. Afterward, do not begin with criticism. Ask, what surprised you? What did you try? When did you ask for help? What would you do differently next time? The review turns experience into judgment. and judgment is what constant rescue prevents. What is one task somebody once trusted you to do before you felt completely ready? What did that trust teach you? And who in your life may need a slightly larger radius, not because the world is harmless, but because capability must be practiced before it is urgently needed? Marcus did not stop checking the window when Eli left the house. But several weeks later, Eli rode to the library with a friend. Marcus felt the old images arrive: traffic, strangers, the state fair, the 23 minutes that had shaped him. This time, he let the images pass without turning them into instructions. Eli came home with 2 books, a bent bicycle reflector, and another story. Marcus was learning something too. Parents do not give children independence by becoming fearless. They give it by carrying their fear without making the child live inside it. But real-world courage faces another powerful obstacle. A child can ride to the store, solve a problem, and return more capable, then lose the rest of the evening to a device that fragments attention, delays sleep, replaces friendship, and becomes almost impossible to put down. In the next episode, we will examine the 4 foundational harms at the center of Haidt's phone-based childhood and why screen time is too small a phrase for what is actually being lost. Because a phone does not only occupy time, it can reorganize the conditions under which a young person becomes a self.